welcome to What's the Hazard? It is Friday, October 21st, and I know this because
it got cold as hell this week.
It did get cold, man. And you guys all know Aaron Cerrone. Everybody knows Aaron. Thanks for being here, buddy. My birthday was October 18th.
Oh, good. Happy birthday.
Yeah, man.
Belated.
Thank you.
I knew that.
You knew that. Yeah, I tell everybody.
I remember we had that conversation. I'm like, oh, it's not a special birthday.
That's right.
It's not
63,
a special
who
number.
gives a shit? Exactly. But then my mother's birthday is the 19th. And then my Uncle Bob, his birthday is the 20th. So this week is back to back to back Fletcher,
Did you guys
Fletcher
used to
birthdays.
have combined party?
We never did the combined parties.
Okay.
My mom and I probably did at some point, having at this, as adults, we've probably had a combined party. We're having a party for my mom actually this Saturday.
Okay.
Which is really interesting, man. And I don't know if this has anything to do with anything, but which it does not.
Do any of our conversations ever?
Typically not. But my mother's birthday was on Wednesday. And so we're having a party on Saturday evening. So my brother and all his family have come into town, which is, his wife's son's grandson. One of my boys is back. My wife and I are hosting the party.
Nice. How old's your mom turn?
My mom's gonna be 85.
Okay, that's a good number.
That's a celebratory number. Absolutely. And then the interesting part of this is my mother has 3 nieces that were her brothers who I've known but have not spent time with for a long time. In fact, 2 of the 3 I haven't seen in probably 35 years.
Right on.
And so they are coming into town. We invited them, and they live all over the country, and they're coming into town. So this weekend will be actually a really
little reunion.
It'll be a nice little reunion. Yeah. Time just goes so fast, man. And those people at your family and people in your life that you want to, we talked about this, that you should stay in touch with and you don't. And it's easy to rationalize being busy and all those other things.
And you get that phone call, so-and-so passed. You're like, oh, shit.
Well, that's what's happening in my world now. All my friends and family, so
I've had two in the last month.
Of friends of yours?
Yeah.
That are your age? These are guys that are approximately your age?
No. They're older than me.
Older guys.
But still, you lose touch with people, and then you get that phone call, and you're like, God.
You do.
And you have every intention to get in touch with them, and then 5 years goes by.
Yeah. And you make excuses. We rationalize all that shit. Well, I do want to say one quick thing, and again, this is something that you and I have talked about. I am a member of the family of Mid-America Martial Arts, the gym that Aaron owns and operates here in Omaha, Nebraska. I've been going there for about 4 years now, and it's a small community of family. You get pretty tight with most of the people. And so it's 2 sides primarily. There is the stand-up side, the kickboxer side, right. And then on the other side is that guys that roll around stuff. What is that called? The jiu-jitsu side.
Men in pajamas?
Yeah, men in pajamas side. And so I have been on the standing up side most of my life, but I look with some interest.
We try to stay above ground most of our life.
Exactly. Right. But that other side, there's a pretty good contingent of men and women that are doing the jiu-jitsu side. And it is something that I'm not familiar with. So I came to you about a month ago and said, could I take some jiu-jitsu? And you immediately went over and checked the batteries in the AED, I think, and then said, okay, what the hell? Let's give it a shot. So, you paired me up with Marcus, one of your instructors, and we've been doing these lessons, and it is incredibly challenging. It is a really cerebral activity, come to find out, which you didn't warn me about.
Well, yeah, I think it's anything new, like anything, because I'll have people who spent most of their time on one side, on either side, and then dip their toe in the water on the other side, and they're just like, oh my God, I didn't realize
there's more to it.
There's more to it than just punching someone in the face. Like there are the nuances are until you get into it. Jiu-jitsu is very much like a human chess match.
It is. It's remarkable.
And it's very much a thinking person's game. I mean, you can get in there and just nuts and bolts, and just like any sport, you can just
try to rough your way through it.
Sure. Your way through it, but it is very much a thinking person's game. And what's interesting about it is, and I use chess as a common ground. Chess is very much trying to stay 2 and 3 moves ahead of the person. Right? A good chess player is like 3 moves ahead of you, and it just lead you down a path of destruction.
Right.
Well, I always equate to jiu-jitsu that it's a chess match, but the board's moving at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And the opponent's trying to rip your head off.
Well, I mean, there's that, but the checkmate is ultimately
Exactly.
the tap out.
The tap, yeah.
But it's the pieces are moving and the board is moving,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to navigate this. And oh, by the way, you got somebody resisting it the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and every time you go to that game, the chessboard is changing on you.
Right.
So it's never the same game twice.
Right. That's really interesting.
So that's, but it's easy to fall into that mode of just brute force and brute strength.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the evolution of your journey on jiu-jitsu is to move away from that and become more the chess player.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is a sport, right? So all else equal, bigger, faster, stronger will win still, right?
Mm-hmm.
But all else equal.
Yes.
But there's a great equalizer in that someone who's not bigger, faster, stronger, but is the better chess player.
Absolutely.
Can neutralize that.
Right. I get smoked in chess by my sons all the time. They're much better. And now I would get smoked at jiu-jitsu or anything else because they're young men who are very strong and athletic and stuff. But I find it fascinating. I've been watching some on TV, which is, I don't know about that. There are so many instructional channels. So to go to one that, that is good information, that is useful information.
It's tough because you define useful and define good.
Yeah.
When you, the beauty of martial arts in general, but jiu-jitsu in particular, and Muay Thai, the more the arts that were predicated on the sport of fighting. So Muay Thai was never meant to be like a martial art for the study of betterment of self. It was a sport from the get-go. Put two guys in a ring and let them beat the crap out of each other. And Muay Thai actually evolved from a weapon art called Caprica Brong, which anybody that knows the history of martial arts, most martial arts, especially the combative martial arts, evolved from a weapon art. Because you would never, in any kind of warring culture, you would never go into a fight without a weapon. It just doesn't make sense, right? And then if you lose the weapon, now you go to a hand-to-hand. So the movements would mimic. Jiu-jitsu was developed initially in Japan, then the Brazilians kind of took it over and adopted it. But it was always meant for the idea a smaller guy against a bigger guy, but it was combative in nature immediately. And so those type of arts tend to track. It was never meant for, hey, come learn these forms just for the cerebral type of betterment of self. It was competitive from the get-go.
Yeah.
And I forgot where I was going with that because I got into the story. But
no, absolutely, man. So,
but when you have those type of arts, so that competitive piece is always there, and it's hard to get away from not comparing yourself in that manner. Did I win or did I lose? Right. So when people initially get in there, it's like, did I win or did I lose? And then as soon as you get past that and you start to go, okay, there's more to this than just winning or losing, and there's lots of ways. Just like in football, it's like there's how many different offensive schemes and different plays can you do. So when you, the beauty of jiu-jitsu is like there's so many different ways to do things. So when you ask a black belt, you can ask 100 black belts how to do an armbar. You might get 100 different answers.
Right.
And the question is, well, which one's right? And it's like, well, yes, they're all correct. They're all ways of doing the same thing. So the beauty of it is there's so many ways that you can adapt it to what you do or what you want to do, but it's also confusing for somebody in the beginning because it's like, what's ground truth here?
Right.
And so it makes learning difficult. It makes teaching difficult because at some point you have to dial it back and go, okay, here's the backbone of how we're going to teach this. And then as we progress a student, now we start to say, okay, now look at all this stuff. Because if you give somebody all the bells and whistles and candy too early, it can be overwhelming, and now they're going in all different directions, and nothing really develops in a sound, man. The foundation doesn't develop.
This is what I'm finding to be true. Yeah, it's a little bit overwhelming because initially it is very intellectually stimulating to try to figure out these and be able to get to a position where you can anticipate. But when you're a beginner, you're just trying to survive,
right?
And second, trying to grasp basic concepts or basic moves or positions, whatever. And so in my impatience, I go on the YouTube and I watch videos, and I'm watching Gordon Ryan and all these, the top level guys, and it doesn't make any sense. It would be like watching somebody split atoms when
well, because you're seeing the detonation of the nuclear bomb,
right?
Seeing everything that makes that happen.
Yes.
Right. And you having studied science can appreciate that. It's like you saw the bomb go off, but you don't understand the splitting of the atom to make that happen.
Right.
And I think that's I equate martial arts to music in a lot of ways. Like I'm learning drums, and it's been one of the most humbling experiences of my life. But there's so much to learn in martial arts, just like there's so much to learn in music. But if you throw someone in a room with all the instruments in the world and said, go, they're going to go, what? Oh, wow. And so it would be chaos, because it's like, well, which instrument? And you can play this instrument 100 different ways, and I can play that one 1,000 different ways. And I find like when I am playing the drums and taking my lesson, I'm the same way. Hey, I heard this. Can you show me this? Or, hey, how about... And the lesson he always pulls me back to some type of foundational music concept.
Right.
To saying, okay, I know you want to do this, but you have to understand this first. And it always comes back to understanding your 4/4 timing or your 4/2 timing or whatever it happens to be. And then I go, oh, and then you realize that once you understand the foundational concept, this fancy thing isn't really all that fancy anymore.
Right.
And it's just rooted in that concept. But I tried to jump to here and he'll always pull me back, which makes me laugh because that's what I do in my own gym. And so there's a lot of parallels to that. And, when you could go to 100 different drumming instructors and get taught 100 different ways, but they'll all usually pull you back to foundational music concepts because otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so if I go on YouTube and like, oh, look at Bonham, look at Neil Peart, look at this and look at that. It's like, oh, they're doing all these crazy things. But then when you strip it down, they're all doing the same thing at the same time.
That's interesting. I have found that to be true too. And interestingly, we do that as well. We, when we'll do our workouts, I'm, thinking way beyond what I'm capable of, I saw this last night and I just see the look on his face like, oh, Jesus, let's just work on the basics, man. I think that if I can just accomplish the basics over the next 5 years, if I'm able to keep doing it for 5 years, I would be really satisfied just to learn the basics,
and basics win fights is the old motto. And when you really look at fighting, everything devolves back to the white belt level. Those basics, those core fundamentals. The basic movement at the right time usually wins. And so most martial arts in general, your foundational concepts and movements, the white and yellow belt level, for however you want to talk about it, everything else is just extrapolation of that and fluff, for lack of a better term. And, when push comes to shove and the shit hits the fan and people are in a fight, it's always the white belt stuff. You look at any fighting, once in a while, the fancy move will get pulled off, but that's by far the exception than the rule.
Right.
And the guy that masters the basics, the fundamentals very efficiently and very effectively, he usually wins.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment.
9.9 times out of 10. And I think that permeates in all aspects of life. It's, at the business college, there's so many different business concepts and management concepts and this, that, and the other thing. And it all comes back to basics. When people ask me about different management styles, and I go, don't make assumptions, treat people with dignity and respect. You're not going to have any problems. It'll all come back to that.
That's interesting.
You can read a million management books, but it's all going to come back to that basic foundation.
Right.
And so, and I think martial arts really exemplifies that, but you don't realize it until you get deep into it. And then you get to a point where you're learning all this stuff, and all of a sudden you have this epiphany one day and you look back and you go, your goal initially is to take it all in and learn as much and build your toolbox as big as you can. And then one day you go back and you go, I need to get rid of all this.
Yeah. Fluff.
And then
excess.
you go back to the little toolbox with like 5 tools in it.
It's kind of like that minimalism approach, right?
Yeah.
Just
And
what do I absolutely need versus all the other?
What am I going to need 9.9 times out of 10? What's always going to have to be there? And then maybe I have a bell and whistle for exceptional occasions. But for the most part, it's the typical journey. It's like grow, build, absorb, collect, and then strip it back down. And then you go right back to square one.
That is so interesting that you make the parallel to leadership and safety, even though we're speaking about something different on its surface. Leadership, safety are exactly that. And they typically need to be stripped down to those basic principles, because we always have a tendency to want to get fancier and fancier and fancier. And I hear people in my world, the safety world, talking about, we're doing this now and we're doing that, but we're not doing the basics well. And it doesn't really support that. And it often crumbles back down. If those fundamentals aren't in place, all of that other fluff doesn't necessarily help.
We tend to overthink things as humans. We tend to try to make something bigger than what it is, because we always have this idea it needs to be bigger than what it is. And simple is powerful. I have that sign up in my gym. Simple is powerful.
Yeah.
But we have this drive to it. Well, it's got to be more than simple. There's got to be more to it than that. I got to make it bigger than that. If I don't make it bigger than that, then I'm not progressing, or I'm not showing change, or I'm not showing the bosses that I'm forward thinking. And it's like, when has anybody ever had a new leader come in, or a new CEO come in, or in the military, a new commander come in, and the person look around and goes, looks good, keep going.
Right.
Never.
Yeah.
They'll always try to make some kind of change. They'll always try to improve, which, don't get me wrong, and you should always try to improve, but that doesn't mean you should always change or turn it on its head. But I think we get caught up in it's got to be more than what it is. And it doesn't have to be. More often than not, it doesn't need to be. And it shouldn't be, especially in safety. It should be probably the most simple programs you could possibly create. Why? Because the ramifications are catastrophic if not. And if it's too complicated, we know it gets too difficult to execute, and the variation creeps in, and people cut corners, and errors happen, and then here we are doing the after action report. Because we made it harder than it needed to be.
So, great point.
Basics win fights, and I think that applies to safety probably more than anywhere. Right? How can we make this program as simple as possible?
Yeah, that overcomplication thing is really a problem.
100%. Really it's like a meeting. There's that approach that no meeting should last more than 15 minutes. Have you ever been in an annual safety meeting that's lasted 15 minutes?
No.
It's all day.
Yeah, they're all day. And people want it to be all day. At least the people that are in control, they think it needs to be all day.
Right. And I think there's an example of overcomplicating part of a program because of why all day.
Yeah.
They're checked out after the first half hour.
Right.
And if it's that much information, why wasn't that spread out in little 15-minute chunks all throughout the year?
Right. So this leads us directly into the actual topic of the day, which was a presentation you gave at the Encore Safety Network last week. We had a program within that group, that collaboration that we have with Ella Brock Norris, and your presentation, which I plagiarized shamelessly on the last episode.
We're all stealing stuff. No one's making up new stuff anymore. That's why I always laugh at when people are like peddling their books or like, who's creating anything at this point?
Very, very few people.
You know what I mean?
But the concept of being unconventional was what you were talking about, and you gave a number of elements that oftentimes lead to either oversights or you mentioned blind spots. You mentioned a few others. I was wondering if you could just spend a few minutes kind of describing the intent of that presentation when you talk about being unconventional.
Yeah, so the whole point, actually, it's a topic I talk about in my entrepreneur class. Small businesses coming out of the gate, when you're trying to compete in a market where there's entrenched competitors, established competitors, how do you gain ground? Like, how do you win? And by win, get some market share, get some notoriety, get some eyes on your product, and you're not going to outspend them. Like, So and you're not gonna. So you got to kind of try to outmaneuver them. You got to do some things that are a little more unconventional, and try to make do with what you have, because you don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of resources. It might be just you. So how do you pull that off? And this idea of being unconventional, and one of the aspects of that is, what aren't the other people doing? What aren't the other companies doing? And can you do that? Can you occupy that space? Can you take that approach? And some industries get stale.
Mm-hmm.
There hasn't been much change in a while. It's just is what it is. It's just blah. What I would say is bowling alleys.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about bowling alleys, bowling was very popular when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Every town had a bowling alley. It was almost a national pastime, bowling. I grew up, I was in a bowling league. All the kids were Friday after school bowling league. All our parents were in a bowling league. Dad was Tuesday night bowling. Mom was Thursday night bowling. So bowling was almost an American pastime. But every bowling alley you went into was exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly the same. And then they started getting stale, and no one was really doing anything because it's bowling. What can you really do with it? I remember on Saturday afternoons watching the PBA, Professional Bowling Association, right? And Earl Anthony and all those guys. Right? And,
Weber, wasn't there again?
Pete Weber?
Pete Weber, somebody?
Senior and junior.
Yeah.
And then, kind of like the 90s and 2000s, you started seeing them play with it a little bit. You started seeing Cosmic Bowl, and on Saturday nights, they would take the lights off and they would glow neon, and they're just trying to reinvigorate the bowling industry. And now you see them, they got these big elaborate sports bars and restaurants serving pizza and stuff. But you see that industry die. And I think it's because it got too stale for too long. And then the reinvigoration came a little too late.
Yeah.
And people it just went out of it. It wasn't in vogue anymore. So it's what's gotten stale when you look around to find where you can fit your business. What's gotten stale in an industry? You don't have to bring something new to the table. I hate the idea of, I hate the word entrepreneur. I teach the damn class and I hate the word because I think it's overused. It's very cliche-ish. When I'm an entrepreneur, which immediately is like, I'm successful. Right? I'm not a business owner. Like, business owner.
Right. I own it. Yeah.
You must be a plumber. Right?
Right. I own a piece of shop.
Oh, I'm an entrepreneur, which gives this aura of I'm successful. I'm like this forward thinker. So it's what I think is entrepreneurial, have an entrepreneurial mindset is can you find areas where people stop paying attention? Like in my mind, coffee shops have gotten stale. Like what's really changed about a coffee shop in forever?
The cost.
When I was right. When I was in college, a coffee shop was this weird little place that smelled weird and was like a recycled bookstore. That all the tree huggers went to, for lack of a better. Sorry. And it was kind of like that's where the people on the fringe of society hung out. And then it went mainstream. But since then, really, they're all kind of cookie cutter. So when I talk to my students, I'm like, what could you do to a coffee shop that could just give it a different look, give it a different approach? You're still selling coffee. The nuts and bolts of it are still there, but it's kind of stale. And they're all the same. What's really different around town? And it's so funny. People get excited. Oh, a new coffee shop. And you walk in, you're like, okay, it's just white walls instead of brown walls. Like, big deal.
Right.
So, when we look at the safety programs, which was the point of, I was relating all this to safety, is like, we tend to ignore things in our safety programs. They get stale. It's like you just haven't paid attention to it. Like we've always done it this way. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, that might be true. It works, but is it still having the same impact that it was when you first started doing it? Like we stop seeing things after a while. That's why in grocery stores, they move stuff around because we stop seeing things. We get into our routine. We know the things we want to buy and we go flying through the store, and then they change it on us. You're like, God damn it, the soup used to be right here. Where is it? And they do that on
is a
purpose,
great analogy.
right? They do that because they want you to pick your head up and relearn the store, because you start seeing things you weren't seeing before, and you'll start buying stuff you didn't buy before. And we need to do that with the safety programs because people stop seeing things.
That's a great,
like I promise you, and you know this, when you go and inspect the place, if you went and asked someone, said, hey, where's the fire extinguisher? I don't know. I think it's over there.
It's around here somewhere.
Right. It's been in the same spot for 20 years, but people
Yeah.
just stop seeing it or they forget where it is. It's
Right.
just, the poster's been on the wall. It has dust on it now. Like stuff we've stopped thinking about and talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's stale. So we need to reinvigorate it. And it could be just something simple as changing the colors on it so people start seeing it again.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean it has to still be that way.
Mm-hmm.
You need to change things. You need to come up with different ways of presenting information, presenting different concepts. Just having different people present the same information keeps it fresh and alive, because you're going to say things differently than I will.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll say it in a way that might resonate with somebody that won't, if I say it, and I'll say it in a way that might resonate with someone else that didn't resonate with you. So you have to get away from this mode of, well, hey, it's up and running, it's working, I can just forget about it now.
Yeah.
Because that's when the chaos will start to set in.
And that is a trap. When it is working, it appears to be working. We don't have any problems, so we assume it's working, which may or may not be true. And so we just stay with it. I think, just like you said, training in particular, we've done this training the same way for so long.
Mm-hmm.
We thought the change was going from VHS to like a DVD. It's the exact same material, but we just have a different format. And all of a sudden we've made a change. And man, now you've still got a bunch of people sitting in front of a video monitor sleeping.
I have to check myself on it too, especially at the gym when I'm I've owned the gym for 20 years. I've been doing martial arts since 1986. It's easy for me to get in a mode of teaching things the same way. And I have to stop myself and change it up, one, to keep myself still interested,
right, and
then prevent the students from getting bored with it. So I have to constantly come up with different ways of disguising repetition.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a great description.
They're getting the reps because they need the reps. The 10,000 hour concept, you need the deliberate practice, but I have to figure out how to get you to do it in as many different ways as possible so you don't get bored and stale with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard.
That's a great disguising the reps.
So how do we, in our safety programs, get people to continue to be safety minded, but it always seems fresh and new to them, and they stay invigorated, and it stays on the tip of the tongue, on the top of their mind. They're not just forgetting about it and starting to ignore it anymore. And it's hard. It is hard to do because it forces you to be creative. It forces you to be a little bit innovative, if you want to use a buzz term. And it just forces you to think outside the box. It forces you to think.
It forces you to think.
Like, I can't just get lazy and just get this thing up and running and then move on to something else. You have to tend to it.
Right.
And if you don't tend to it, it will get stale and then forgotten about and then ignored and then not done.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. Disguise the reps, because we know that if you want to improve at something, first of all, you have to practice the reps correctly.
Right.
Practice makes permanent.
Yes,
it doesn't make perfect.
Correct.
So we have to practice correctly, but disguising the reps so that it doesn't seem mundane or it doesn't seem just overly repetitious. That's a great mindset.
And it works on both sides. Like, if I'm the safety leader in charge of the program, if I'm always looking for new ways to present information, new ways to do something, I'm continually learning as well.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many times I've gone back to, how can I teach this differently? And then I learned, oh yeah, I forgot about that myself.
Right.
Oh yeah, I forgot about this series of movements. I haven't taught that in a while.
Right.
So you go back and you go back through your programs in an intent to reinvigorate them, and you go, geez, this is out of date.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't looked at this in a while.
Right.
Clearly I haven't taught it in a while.
Right.
And thank God, because it would have been taught wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So there's benefits on both sides, right? You're constantly refreshing, constantly updating. I'm keeping my mind in the game and on top of the latest and greatest information, and I'm learning too, right? A lot of times you don't realize how much you don't know until you try to teach it.
That's a great point.
And then you're teaching it. I can't tell you how many times I've been teaching it, I'm like, what the hell? Why aren't they getting it? And then I go, oh shit, I'm teaching it wrong. Right?
Yeah, or missing a step or whatever it is. Yeah.
And it's you realize, oh damn it. And now which could be catastrophic in a safety world.
Absolutely.
You think you're doing it right just because you're not paying attention, and you're like, oh crap, we've been doing this wrong the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
I totally set them up for failure.
Yeah.
Not intentionally, because I thought it was right. And then, but I got stale. I got into that just routine, comfort breeds complacency.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got complacent and went, oh crap, I'm teaching it wrong.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think, in the safety world, we talk a lot about doing annual reviews of programs or, revisiting annual training or whatever.
At a minimum.
And I think that just becomes oftentimes just this pencil whip, oh, it's the same program. There's nothing wrong.
Still there.
Yep. All good. Still there. Just change the date, annually I update the date or something. But I think we need to do that with intent. I think we need to do that with how can I find, not necessarily to change it, because it may actually be an effective program, but how can I re-deliver the message? How can I maybe repackage the message so that it doesn't become stale?
And the person who created it really shouldn't do the review.
And that's a blind spot thing you were talking
100%,
about.
And get a different set of eyes on it. It's like when you write a paper in college, if you're the only one that ever looks at it, it will have mistakes in it.
Mm-hmm.
You stop seeing things after a while.
No doubt.
Then you get somebody else to read it and they're like, dude, you spelled the wrong right off the bat. And you stop seeing that 8 hours ago.
Yeah.
You need to have multiple eyes in these reviews and let people go through it that maybe have never seen it before and say, hey, can you go through this and tell me what you think? And give me an honest, beat it up for me. And they might start reading through it and they're like, this whole section makes no sense.
Mm-hmm. So they ask some questions and now you're put in a position where you have to actually understand it and address those questions. I think that would be useful. You might go back
and read and you're like, wow, that doesn't make sense. It made sense to me at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
And if it doesn't make sense to you, there's probably other people didn't make sense to. And then it's like, well, how would you write it? Or what can we do to make it better? Or and so now you are refreshing the program. Like, again, you're doing an annual review with intent. And sometimes it needs to be more than an annual review. You know how quick the safety world changes. You know how quick policy change. And it's not just what's in front of you, the second and third order effects. A lot of times, like, new policy comes in or new legislation comes in, and we go, okay, this program needs to change. Boom. Well, is that the only one it's affecting? Like, what other strings does that program have to other aspects? Like, you really need to check all of them, because we'll forget about this little subsection over here references back to this one, and we need to change that. So it really should force you to do a reevaluation of everything, because you don't know where else that permeates. And again, it once a year at a minimum. At a minimum. And it doesn't, the leader shouldn't be doing it all the time. They need to be still doing it, because one, for relearning, and we forget about stuff. Like, you're crazy if you don't think you forget about stuff.
Right.
And then who's ever working with you. But I would bring people in from the field. I think that's a lot of companies should do that. Pull people from the field. Say, hey, you're going to be in the office this week because you're going to review this program for me. And I need to pull someone else in and say, you're going to review this program for me.
Right.
And then
all pays the same. I don't want to hear the bitching.
Yeah.
I just need
especially in the winter, they don't want to be out there anyway. Right. And get different eyes on this stuff, but then you're getting different perspectives looking at it as well.
Right.
Like, I'm stale. I have a stale eye to it. But you pull someone out of the field or someone out of the shop and let them read it and look at it, make it part of the job. Hey, this week all you're doing is just reviewing this, take notes. What do you like? What do you don't like? What do you see that you don't understand? And I just need a third eye on this thing. And all of a sudden it's like, man, I just got it from the perspective of the crane operator. And he's like, 3/4 of this we don't even do. What do you mean you don't even do?
That's a great point.
No, doesn't it make sense? We don't even do that. It's not even applicable. That was 3 machines ago. You're like, what? It's like, holy smokes.
Exactly.
And then
work is imagined versus work is done. Right. This is how I think it's happening, and what's really happening out there is probably different.
A lot of times, because we've all been there. We will figure out the most efficient way to do something as an employee and a worker.
Of course.
Work smarter, not harder. If I can do it in an hour and they expect me to do it in 4 hours, I'm going to do it in an hour and then hang out for 3 hours. So employees know how to get really efficient at stuff, right? It's just preservation of self. They also know how to do things smarter. Like, I know the procedure says this, but I can eliminate 4 of those steps.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's safe or not is up for debate. However, there are a lot of best practices out there that we don't know about. as management and leadership because we just haven't mined that information. Employees are very smart. They're very resilient.
Very adaptive.
Yeah. And they figured out better ways to do things, and they'll keep it quiet because it's their little secret, and they're getting a leg up because now their dollar per hour has gotten better.
Right. Absolutely. Right? Yeah.
So, when you get that feedback and you're you shouldn't really be shocked in some cases, but it's like, well, duh, they're doing it every day. Of course, they're going to figure out a better way to do it. And better is relative. I understand that.
Well, like you said, they will find
not be safer.
They may find a more efficient way to do it.
Sure.
And it's that, I think I was talking last week about that efficiency thoroughness trade-off, right? I'm going to be as efficient as I can be, might sacrifice thoroughness up to the point where I believe it's just as safe as it was.
Sure.
So unless it's all of a sudden now I'm running around on top of the elevator without any fall protection or guardrails, I can tell that's not as safe.
Right.
But I'm gonna make it as efficient as possible. It still seems safe. So those things are worth considering as the employer. Those might be things that we can implement, or maybe we need to rein in a little bit, but got to be aware of it.
Either way, it's good information.
Good information
to find out.
Exactly.
So getting stale is I think is every restaurant. We call it boredom. I'm in a rut. We've all said that I'm in a rut. I just don't feel like going to the gym. I'm in a rut. Well, it's probably because you've been doing the same workout over and over. Forever. Change it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Instead of going to the gym, go ride a bike. Instead of try something different.
Exactly.
Explore something different. Explore a new way to go about this fitness thing and this health thing. So I think it's important we look at safety in the same way. Like, what's a new way we can go about thinking about this safety thing just to prevent us from getting in a rut? Because as well as I do, when you get in a rut and you stop thinking about it, that's when the accident happens. Part of the way to avoid being in a rut and being stale, we talked about this, is having the daily stand up, having the daily before the shift starts and at the end of shift. Hey, let's talk about it. Let's review. Here's a topic of the day. Let's keep this on the top of our mind. Let's do a review at the end of the day. Hey, what are the near misses we saw? Did we guys see anything?
How did it
happen? How did it go? And now you're bookending it, and now you're keeping it fresh. We're still thinking about it. Maybe each day somebody new, somebody different. I shouldn't say somebody new. Somebody present the topic of the day. Or maybe it's a weekly thing, the topic of the week, and then Doug does it this time, Cam does it next time. You're keeping everybody engaged, everybody fresh. You have to do things to prevent this staleness and this rut from happening.
Right.
And when you're doing that, those blind spots will disappear because now you're going and touching everything, and you're readdressing and you're revisiting, and now there's less chance of these things happening.
Well, it's no different than, it's interesting because I have some clients that have requested monthly visits. So I go to the facilities on a monthly basis. We'll do walkarounds. But I have blind spots as well. I mean, I might be the safety guy, but I have inherent blind spots. And I even notice when I'm walking through a facility, I'm walking past stuff that we've already addressed in a previous visit perhaps, or maybe they're not going to get to that. So let me, I catch myself allowing blind spots to exist perhaps, or something like that. So changing that up.
Part of that's assumptions.
Yeah, maybe so.
So, in your case, you were there last month. You talked about these 4 things. So when you show up next month, you make the assumption that they address those 4 things. So you're not going to look at them this time.
Right. Yeah.
We're going to move on to these 4 things.
That could be
and
true.
It becomes a blind spot if you're not careful, because 6 months goes by and you haven't looked at it because you make the assumption, well, we already addressed it. It should be fine. And then you look at it and go, oh shit, they didn't do it right.
Right. Haven't done anything.
Yeah. In some cases haven't done.
Yeah.
So, and I think we do that a lot. We make an assumption that when it was addressed at one point, it's addressed forever.
It was addressed. Yeah. Right. That's a great comment.
Forever. And that's just simply not the case. It may never, just because we talked about it doesn't mean they took any action on it.
Not to mention there was an underlying cause for that behavior or condition to exist. And we can comment on the condition and get that corrected. But if we don't address that,
the root cause,
that underlying behavior, or what allows that to exist or re-exist, it's probably going to recur.
Well, and in many cases, it takes time to truly rectify. Like,
that's true.
They'll fix it for a little while.
That's
but
true.
Then that behavior is still there and it creeps back in.
Right.
And it devolves. And it takes more than just a one-time effort.
Right. It's interesting.
In a lot of cases.
How are you doing on time, man? I have no idea what time it is. We started early today.
It is 9:30.
9:30. We were talking because we started early today. So Cam, thanks for coming in early, man.
That was good.
Aaron has a hard start on another appointment,
yeah.
so
we're good. We got some time.
But we did get in early, and I appreciate that. And then I was, of course, late. I was the last one here. I was supposed to bring apple fritters, which I didn't.
The second I walked in, he was saying, "Didn't somebody say something about donuts?"
Did you?
And I was like, "That was not me."
Yeah, that was me, man. I apologize.
I threw you under the bus, Doug. I'm sorry.
I will make this right. I just got behind schedule this morning, and so I got here a little bit later than I had anticipated. So,
well, there's no donuts here because where we're at, Hale Varsity, they don't work on Fridays.
That's true.
My understanding, they only have like a 2-day work week around
right,
here. Exactly. Is the way it sounds.
Yeah, and actually, Cam is the only person I've ever seen here.
So I walked in, I was like, "Dude, why don't you guys turn the lights on? It's like a dungeon." He's like, "Well, we're technically not working today." I was like, well, how? What?
Right, right. Allegedly, there's like thousands of people that work here. I've only seen this one guy, man.
That's fair.
So good for you, buddy. Occasionally, I see that other guy, but rarely. Well, I do think the idea of disguising the reps is an interesting one because we do need repetition. We do need to reiterate. We do need to revisit. There are regulatory requirements to do that, and there is common sense reasons for doing that.
There's this concept called kata out there, and it's all part of the Toyota production system and Lean Six Sigma and kata. It's a martial arts term, right?
I was going to say I've heard that.
Kata is a series of movements, called forms sometimes, and it's just meant to get repetition, and it's meant to drive home a particular movement. And you do it through this sequence of this pattern sequence of movements that you make the student learn and do a bazillion times. And you got to show your forms and your kata. And it's not one, there's value in the discipline of learning the kata and learning the form, but it's also the repetition. And in corporate world, kata is the same concept of what's the behavior I want out of my employees. Now, how do I institute a method or a series of events or activities to get them to practice that, repeat it,
become habitual to some degree,
or just make it efficient and proficient and learned. Then I know it's going to be able to permeate throughout the rest of the company and the culture, right? So this concept of kata is just that. It's how do I get the repetition to drive home and make permanent this behavior or this skill set that I want from my employees.
Interesting. Almost to a muscle memory type of position.
Sure, and it just puts science to it. How many reps do I need them to get? Right, and how many ways can I get them to get those reps?
Yeah,
before I bless them as good to go.
Right, or before they just abandon ship. I mean, which is why we disguise the reps from time to time.
Sure,
maybe
100%.
Take a different approach to that, so it's not as mundane necessarily. And that is really an interesting challenge. And your comment about this is tough because it requires energy on the part of the person leading it.
It does.
It's easy just to plug in the same DVD or play the same training every year. It's easy to just read off the sheet at a toolbox talk. It's easy.
Check the box.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And that's tough. So getting back to jiu-jitsu.
Let's go full circle here.
Yeah, this safety stuff. Yeah, okay, I'm fine with that. But yeah, no, I did want to comment, and everybody at the gym uses Rev Gear equipment primarily. I know that's a company that you have used for equipment at your gym for a long time.
Yeah, that's who we've gone.
And they have been, and I, wanting to be on the team, I ordered some gear from Rev Gear. Everybody in the gym uses it. All of the instructors seem to use it, and there's a lot of their equipment laying around the gym. So I ordered some stuff from, and of the articles that I purchased, one did not fit, one did not work. And so they sent me a survey, and I responded to the survey immediately, great, sucked. And I was contacted within about 15 minutes via text. Is this Doug Fletcher? I'm with Rev Gear. We understand that you weren't satisfied. We want to make it right. I just want to comment that I was really impressed by that. They sent me a t-shirt which I appreciate. My wife loves it when I get new clothes.
Right.
So
she can throw something out.
She can throw something out. Yeah.
And the one that looks like Swiss cheese finally go.
Exactly. That old one probably from West Side or something she'll pitch that I've had for 40 years. But yeah, I just wanted to make that comment, man. I am very attuned to good customer service,
which I think is sorely lacking anymore in a lot of cases, which makes me laugh right now. We're in this environment where inclusion and acceptance is preached, but I think at the same time our basic manners and customs and courtesies, coming through military, we used to have customs and courtesies classes, and which to me is just customer service is just an extension of that.
Right.
Customer service just seems to just take a back seat in a lot of cases. And it's just amazing because it's so easy, and you can, in business, you don't even need the best product. You just overserve.
That's a great point.
Customer, they're going to keep coming back. And in my entrepreneur class, I always tell people, I go, look, you can go to a restaurant and have the best steak ever. We've all experienced this. It just melts in your mouth. You're like, this is heaven. Whatever they did to that, I don't want to know, but it's amazing. But if the hostess was rude, the waiter's a dick, you're always having to ask for water, and the sides were just okay, you're not going back.
Right.
But you go back to that sports bar that in reality is just shitty sports bar food,
microwave food,
but it's just fried food. By any stretch would you consider it fine dining, but as soon as you walk in, hey Doug, what's going on? Hey, your table's right over there. You want the usual? You don't want for anything. They're nice, they're pleasant, they have conversation. You'll go back there. Absolutely. Over and over and over.
No doubt.
Because of the experience and the customer service. Okay, people will drive across town for a freaking cup of coffee. They will pass by 30 other coffee places because of the experience and the customer service, not because of the coffee.
I totally agree. And I do that intentionally. And I'm coughing, so excuse me. Sorry, man. Cam, if that hurt.
So I think it's a great separator for companies. It's just basic customer. It blew your mind that they called you up.
It blew my mind. And they took care of it immediately. They sent me the right size the next day.
Yeah.
And for them, it seemed like it was, intentional. I mean, they were really wanting to make sure that I was satisfied. And I'm not like you. I'm not a customer. I'm just a customer. Right. You're a customer. I mean, you have, a stake in the game, and they understand that. I'm nobody, but they still wanted to make it right. So I just wanted to point out, I noticed that and appreciated it.
They know it permeates. And it's this concept of raving fans. There's actually a book out there called Raving Fans. It's a great book, and everybody should read it. And safety professionals should read it, because it's all about buy-in. It's all about, it's not how I treat you, because it's about how I treat you affects everybody you know.
That's true. Absolutely.
And if you do it right, I always butt heads with advertising people at the college, because I don't believe in external advertising. I believe that money's better spent internally on your customers, because if I can spend $100 on you and you have a fabulous experience, and you think for every dollar you spend, you feel like you get 10 back, you're going to tell your friends. And there's no better advertising on the planet than personal referral from somebody. People will always go, I trust Doug. If Doug trusts them, that's all I need to know. That's who I'm going to do business with, or I'm at least going to give them first crack at it. Okay, you can spend $1,000 on marketing, and you're just throwing a net, hoping I catch some fish. Okay, but if I spend $1,000 on Doug, he's got a fish bowl full of fish that I'm now pulling from.
Interesting.
And that's the approach. And, we can apply that to our safety programs really quick. It's like, how do I make people fans of the safety program? And then they'll be my ambassadors of it from there on out.
Exactly. That's a great comment. And that's exactly why, I've noticed that you don't do a lot of advertising of Mid-America, but word of mouth is incredibly strong. That's how I heard of you. Someone else told me about the gym, and I have told many, and everybody that's listening. I mean, if you're an Omaha native or if you live in the area, I would encourage you to check it out. And that sense of community is really strong, and I know that some people are perhaps a little bit timid about martial arts. Maybe they have a vision of what that's going to be like.
I think there's, what's funny is I think there's two opposite ends of the spectrum now in martial arts. It's UFC, or it's boring. Yes, sensei, no sensei, right?
Right.
It's Karate Kid or it's UFC. And it's really funny to me because I think those are the two perspectives, and then they'll both chase people away.
Yes.
They both attract people and they both chase people away, or not chase people away, just get people to avoid it. And it's hilarious. And which, by the way, the Cobra Kai series is really good. If anybody watches Netflix,
is it?
Yeah, it's really good. But anyhow, yeah, it's interesting, the perspective. But what's funny is I actually broke my own rule, and this summer, I had been pulling some extra cash on the side, and I said, just in case I wanted to do something with the gym, or it's always good to have that emergency fund. And I had been watching this one company, that would deal with just gyms, and then they would do some external marketing for you. And so I took a flyer on it because I thought what they're doing was pretty good, and I thought we could use a bump, and I freaking hated it.
Really?
I just hated the whole experience because I'm not a control freak. But all of a sudden I was letting somebody else represent me, and the way they were going about doing it, it didn't feel or look like us because it wasn't us. And then we were getting people coming in that weren't coming in from word of mouth, weren't coming in for personal referral, didn't know anything about us, and were walking in with just the wrong impression of what we do, or the wrong impression of what we were offering. And it was a nightmare in my mind. And I stopped it. It cost me a few $1,000, but to me, that's the problem with marketing. It's always you're rolling the dice. You got better odds at Vegas in a lot of cases, and I'll probably never do it again. And I hadn't done it forever, but I just kind of revisited, and it just reaffirmed what I knew. And I think that's when you invest in your existing customers. If you're going to spend $500 on advertising, take that money and throw a party for your existing customers, or go buy all your existing customers a book and send it to them. Say, hey, thanks for being a customer. Thought you might like this.
That's interesting.
That money's better spent.
Yeah.
Because now Doug appreciates the T-shirt. He appreciates the book, and he's going to tell somebody about you.
Right.
And that's gold.
That's gold.
Right.
Totally.
That's gold.
You and I both. I've never done any advertising. I don't use this as advertising for my business. I don't. This is purely informational. It's enjoyable. It's fun. It's not intended to be marketing, other than for my sponsors like Mid-America Martial Arts and the others. I do want to encourage them. But if you are an Omaha area native or live in the surrounding communities, you should come by and check it out. I really enjoy coming to the gym. It's a great place. I've made some great friends there, and I think everybody has an opportunity to benefit from health, fitness, activity.
I think anything,
training,
martial arts aside, music, biking. It's just what you got to do stuff to keep your life fresh. You got to try new things. You got to explore new things. You can't let yourself get stale. Not to pull this full circle, but you just can't let yourself get into routine. I know routine is important. I'm a person of routine. I get out of my routine. I don't like it. But within that routine, I'm constantly plugging and playing different things. Right. Like I said, I added drums into it in the last year. I'm learning drums. I started biking more so I bought a new mountain bike because I wanted to encourage my son to ride more bike. So now I find myself biking more. So you just kind of plug and play things. It's okay to have a backbone, like a central routine to your week. I think that's important. Otherwise, it can be chaos. Not many people can just survive and thrive in chaos. Right? Resilience is a big issue right now in corporate world because people don't do well with change. But it's okay to have a foundation, but you need to plug and play elements within there. Otherwise, you pick your head up 10 years later, you're just like, man, I've been doing the same thing for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's why, people, I'm burnt out with work. Well, what does burnt out really mean? Right? Are you physically broken? No, you're in an office job, right? It's not like you're an NFL player where the average lifespan is 2 years because you're physically broken. What does burnt out mean? It just means you're bored, you're stale. Mm-hmm. You've had no variety. And that's partly your fault.
Yeah, and in part it is. Absolutely. I would agree. We got to get you on to your next appointment, man.
We do. I got another safety meeting.
Yeah, you got another safety meeting. We appreciate that. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Remember, I think disguise the reps is going to be the buzzword from this one. Be unconventional.
Stay fresh.
Stay fresh. All of those things are so critical within the safety world. Great ideas. Check out Mid-American Martial Arts. Come by for a lesson or just to take a tour or something. Ashley will show you around.
There you go.
Have a great weekend. Cam, I'll expect to see you over there next week, man. All right, buddy. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.